Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I am back. I'm back with another, Rising of the Shield Hero What If. I mean, it's kind of like not Shield Hero anymore because I kind of don't give him a shield. I didn't give him a shield last time either, this time we're not giving him a shield either, obviously, because welcome to What If Naofumi was the legendary Blacksmith hero. I believe the person that suggested this is Hello Hi, which that's his name on my YouTube membership, but I think his name in Discord is Blue. I'm pretty sure. He can comment down below if that's a fact or not. I feel like that's true. I have a couple of these like in line already. Like I have two more like that I have ideas for that I'm doing. So keep that in mind. Like I already have like multiple. I'm not gonna like say which ones they are right now, but I do have more in line very soon. And yeah, that's about it. I'm not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna keep trucking with these what ifs. I've been having a lot of fun with them. A lot more fun than My Hero Academia currently at the moment. But don't worry, My Hero Academia is not going away. I know a lot of you like My Hero. So but yeah, we're here with Shield Hero. So I'm not gonna waste any more of your time. Check links in the description and stuff like that. But let's just get right into the what if. Let's get it. In this universe, Naofumi Iwatani is, different. He's not in this modern world where he plays video games of more or less strategy and, goes to the library to get books and anime and manga. He's not in that. His family is not very well off by any means. He's not comfortable by any means. He's actually the son of a blacksmith of, a world that needs these weaponries made. He's a son of more or less a blacksmith's apprentice that he'll slowly but surely began to learn more and more. He became very handy with an anvil and a mallet. Now Fumi Iwatani did this for a living, more or less. That's all he really knew. He didn't know much else more. He didn't really have many friends. I mean, he had some here and there, but everything was war after war after war. His goal was to be the best blacksmith, just like his father. His mother would also help from time to time, but she would be in a different kind of category of work in terms of, the war efforts. But Naofumi would learn more and more about being a blacksmith, making weaponry, swords, shields, spears, various things, and this would be the reason why he would be sent to this place that we know as the Shield Hero universe, or it's more like a video game universe, you could say. One day he's slamming his mallet over and over and over again on an anvil until he needs to check out some instructions to more or less finish a sword that he's currently building. He looks at the instructions and begins to read. It begins to explain the metal he needs, the cast iron he needs, and many other things, and when he gets to the bottom, there's nothing. He looks back up at the top and there's nothing as well, and it looks like it's a scroll. The scroll begins to read out. It begins to say that the legendary blacksmith hero is known around the world, that he would be summoned into a fateful world and build things that would help that world survive. Build things that would help him survive and the people associated with him. It then begins to say more and more until it stops with a period and another period and another period. And then it says, to be continued. Now Fumi is confused by this and he goes to ask his father something, walking over to him, but it begins to glow and he is gone in an instant. His father hears Naofumi's voice and walks out, but he sees that he's not there, and that Naofumi is gone. Naofumi then wakes up, sort of. He's teleported to a place. He looks like he's in a massive cage, and 3 other people are around him. One wielding a spear, another wielding a sword, and another wielding a bow. He looks at himself and he sees that there's a giant mallet or hammer, and what hangs from that is an anvil. He picks it up and it's light as a feather. He grabs the anvil, and it's light as a feather as well. He seems like it's odd, and they even ask him what that whole thing is about. Like, what is he anyways? Like, they have a sword, they have a spear, they have a bow. What he has a big mallet and a anvil? I'm not so sure. How would you guys know either? I'm confused. They say that he's right, that actually isn't something they should be dwelling on. They need to ask what's going on. The king's men and noblemen and people like that will walk up to them and begin explaining everything, explaining that they are the 4 heroes that have been summoned. But for some reason, a odd and different hero has been summoned this time around. Maybe it's out of necessity, or maybe it's that the shield hero wasn't fit for this world anymore. So they are then taken to the king. The king basically talks to them, explaining everything that he's seen, and he sees Naofumi with a giant hammer and an anvil, and asks if he's really one of the heroes. I'm not sure. How would I know? We all don't know this world. And he says that he apologizes, that it's kind of odd. Normally it's a shield hero that gets summoned, and it seems like he's a little different. So nobody exactly knows what he's about and what powers he even has. Now Fumi nods and begins to open up a weapon menu. It seems like it's some sort of, well, technological advancement. It seems like there's weird loading screens and stuff like that, and he begins kind of messing around with it, seeing a gem in his anvil, and he touches it, seeing this level up screen and various other things, and he really is confused about this. He's never really seen video games. He's not from a time where there's these, well, fancy technologies. He's been just home, malleting, hitting swords on an anvil and various things like that. Eventually leading to them obviously going to their semi-hotel room, and they talk about it. They talk about this video game-esque world, and Naofumi even says that he's not from a place that is futuristic by any means, that he actually seems to be from, well, a place where war is imminent. War happens over and over again, but he's not part of, well, this whole video game thing they're talking about, and he asks if they can give him a quick rundown. Of course, they decide to actually give him that rundown, especially because of what he was saying. Now, Fumi was saying that he helped with wars. Of course, they would feel implied to help him out the best they possibly can. So that's what they do. They help him out as much as possible until the next day. They basically arrive, and there's more or less party members that are waiting for them, and they begin to choose who they want to go to, but nobody goes to Naofumi. They've heard that he doesn't actually know this world by any means, doesn't even know video games, but Naofumi even says that, well, he got an explanation and that he's sure to find out what's happening. I mean, he worked for, well, a war effort. This shouldn't be that much different. It's basically the same thing. You're going to war. And, well, no one really budges, and, well, no one even says much at all. That was until Mine decides to, well, join Naofumi's party. I mean, not out of malice by any means, but actually because she wants something. It leads to, obviously, him deciding to make a weapon. With just him and her, they get more, obviously, money to work with, so they go to the other blacksmith, well, man by the name of... He gets equipment for her, but decides not to get anything for himself. He feels that he needs to learn what he has here, and maybe he can even make weaponry. He looks around, and it seems that when he touches certain weapons, he actually learns how to make them, and he can make them at a discounted price. So more or less, he spends for materials and could make weaponry out of those materials. And it seems that when he collects things, he can actually make weaponry out of those as well. This then leads to actually him not buying Mine any weaponry, but actually creating something that would fit her best. And that's what he does. She is really good at magic, so he makes something that would more or less boost her magic, making a sword that is more or less developed through the use of magic. But this sword's weird. It seems like he's able to put a leveling system on the sword. And that's what he does. It's as if it's its own legendary weapon. Maybe not as strong as the ones they have, but definitely interesting. It might even grant multiple abilities, and mine is impressed. She takes the weapon and they head off and more or less begin their training of some sorts with these small orange little balls that have sharp teeth. But this training doesn't go super well. Now Fumi doesn't have a weapon really himself, and he's able to create one, but even the boost that he has from that isn't insane. He just makes himself a regular weapon to start off with, just to see where he stands. He feels more like a support hero in a way. It's kind of odd. This then leads to a semi-successful day of training and eventually leads to them going to bed eventually. But that's not the only thing that happens throughout the night. Mine decides that she wants to switch places, that she doesn't want to be with the, Blacksmith hero anymore, and decides to go with Motoyasu. But this time he wasn't framed by any means, but she just says that she doesn't want anything to do with him anymore, that he seems incompetent. And hearing this, Naofumi is a little frustrated, saying that he made her a weapon and that this is how she treats him. And she says that that was a gift, but Naofumi decides, that he'll just be taking the gift back. They say if he takes another step near her, or Motoyasu says this, if he takes another step near her, that they'll have to fight. But Naofumi says that he wasn't going to. He clicks something on his anvil and it shuts down the weapon. The weapon no longer has the boost, and the weapon does 0 damage. It seems like Naofumi has the power to regulate his weapons that he makes for certain people, and that will definitely become useful very, very quickly. I mean, obviously, in fact. So Naofumi is frustrated with the fact that he was basically used to make a weapon for her, but now she has nothing. She says that that's unfair and that that's ridiculous, that why would he do that to her? But he just ignores it and leaves, saying that she's not part of his party anymore and that it doesn't matter to him. He heads off and he actually meets up with the blacksmith once again and begins to chat to him about certain things and about certain materials and where he can get them. He actually decides to help the boy out, and basically Naofumi explains to him everything that happened, more or less that he made a weapon for her and then she just peaced out. He said the blacksmith obviously is like saying that that's really lame and that is very unloyal, but to not worry about it, that he can find plenty of more helpers anywhere really, especially with what he can provide. And he says thank you, that he appreciates the trust, and he says that he'll pay back anything he can to the blacksmith for future endeavors. And Earhart explains that if he ever needs tips on certain things, he'll give it to him. But he knows that he's heard that he used to be a blacksmith in his other world. Yeah, I used to be. I appreciate the help. I'll see you soon. Now Fumi leaves, and with the rest of his money, which is a decent amount, luckily she didn't steal all of it. He goes and begins searching for certain metals and certain things that he needs. He was thinking that maybe he can make himself a really good weapon, and that would allow him to, fend for himself for a little bit, at least until he can't do any more than he already has been. So he decides that he'll make himself something similar to his hammer, that he has a giant hammer that he makes the weapons with, so might as well have a giant hammer that will not only kill monsters but also can make more weapons, armor, and stuff like that. So he actually figures out a way to modify his own hammer. It's actually pretty simple. Initially he thought his hammer was literally just for making weaponry and stuff like that, but he learned that with modifications with other minerals and materials and more or less just leveling up, his hammer can change in different ways. It can go into a sort of battle mode, but it will only turn one half of the hammer into that battle mode. He can turn it into an axe or a sharp blade, and eventually it looks that he can develop his hammer more and more and more, which is perfect. If he's able to get it perfect to the point where he can jump out of battle mode and then back into creation mode, it could be very beneficial. The hammer looks like it could definitely pack a punch, but it looks like right now to monsters it really won't. So he gathers a bunch of materials, the most he possibly can with the money. Obviously, he can't spend all of it, but he can gather some materials. He's actually able to get a discount on some of these materials, especially because he is, well, one of the heroes. And he actually is able to get some stainless steel, some cobalt, and various other things that he could use in the future. But more importantly, the stainless steel. He's actually able to use the stainless steel, combine it with his hammer, and he creates an axe blade on the other side of his hammer. He has one hammer side that is stainless steel, and the other axe side which is a sharp version of the stainless steel that could cut through a lot of things. He's actually gonna see a lot of benefits, at least for that. But with his leftover materials, he starts thinking about what he should make. Should he make himself more armor, or should he just buy armor from Erhard? He begins playing with the idea, and he decides that he's going to use the rest of the materials to make more weapons. So that's what he does. He makes more weapons with that materials, and then he sells them. He sells the weapons he just made that are powerful. Don't get me wrong, he makes it so that they're not like legendary weapons, and he actually decides that he's not going to make legendary weapons unless he knows that his teammates will be loyal to him. And when he makes the legendary weapons, quote unquote, they aren't necessarily just like his, or probably not even like the spear, the sword, or the bow heroes. It's probably just a toned down version of it. There's no way that he can make something as strong as those weapons, especially at such a low level. But he can definitely make something very similar, and he's seen that with mine. But after some time of just thinking about that, he actually makes just regular weapons, and they're pretty strong. And he ends up selling them for way more than actually the materials he bought. He finds that this is a fantastic way for him to actually make a ton of money, and also maybe even in the future supply loyal villages with weaponry as well. But that's something else that he needs to think about later, and he actually needs to think about leveling himself up right now with his half axe, half hammer type weapon. So he heads off with the anvil on his back and some, well, nice armor from the Erhard or the Blacksmith, in which he even questions how he got so much money in such a quick amount of time. But what Erhard doesn't know is that the quality of weapons Naofumi can make is insane. So he's out and begins training once again, or leveling up once again on the same monsters he's been, eventually leading for it to be night. And he leveled up quite a bit, nothing crazy, and it would be faster if he had some help, but unluckily he currently doesn't. Well, that is until someone approaches him. Someone approaches him, well, to offer him some help. It's a slave-like owner. It seems like he has a slave market that not many people know about, and he offers Naofumi some, well, high-level slaves. Obviously, Naofumi currently does not have the money for any of these high levels, and even remarks that he knows that he doesn't have the money for it, and he needs to, well, settle for something cheaper. And the slave owner or the slave market person decides that he can, well, spare this girl by the name of Raphtalia, and that she's a little sick, but she's pretty cheap, and that she could be a great addition to his team. Out of, honestly, pity initially, he decides that he wants to buy her, and does so at a really cheap price, and he says that it's a hero's discount, but Naofumi knows that that is BS. He purchases Raphtalia, but doubt begins to creep through his mind that if she will be, well, loyal to him. The incident with mine may have not been as grim as it could have been, but it definitely made him question everything going on. Who is he truly at war with? Supposedly he's supposed to be here fighting the waves, but it seems like he's still at war with the kingdom. It feels like he's at war with everybody else. Why does it feel this way? He doesn't even know. He's not sure, but he can't really dwell on it very much more. He needs to, well, begin to, well, for one, cure Raphtalia from her mild sickness, in which he luckily has the money to do just that, and then also get her some, well, weaponry. in which he makes her a stainless steel sword just to start out with, which is pretty powerful, at least for the time being, and it's a short sword, you could say, and obviously he has his own way of defending himself as well. With the slave crest on Raphtalia though, it seems like, well, there won't be a problem with her obeying, at least in the beginning. But now Fumi begins to realize that Raphtalia has gone through various incidences. She has recurring nightmares about various things that she really doesn't want to talk about, and he can tell that she's deeply scarred, eventually leading to him finally curing her of, well, the sickness that she has. Now Fumi though still is pretty, well, hesitant about Raphtalia, but luckily eventually he sorta gets past that. Nothing crazy has happened too much, at least to the point where he would resent Raphtalia, but luckily he's able to see fit, at least in terms of Raphtalia. With wanting more ways of getting, well, materials, gems, and other things like that so he can make weaponry and also sell it for money, he begins to ask around to see what the best place to go to actually find that. And Erhard tells him that the nice village of Loot would be a great place to stop by, in which Naofumi does just that. Eventually when he arrives, Naofumi begins to talk with the locals and also the more higher ups in the village about buying weaponry from him, and they obviously are willing to do so, wanting to be able to protect themselves, and Naofumi begins to build somewhat of a trust with them. He actually asks though about these, maybe he can find materials and where he can find maybe valuable ore, and they say that there is a mine over, well, in the near distance, and well, he can find some valuable ores there, maybe even valuable enough to make into weaponry. So now Fumi heads off with Raphtalia, also looking forward to maybe getting some more XP with Raphtalia's help, because leveling her up is very, very important to him, especially because he can't do everything on his own. He's still getting used to his new weapon version of his hammer, or his more combat version of his hammer. They enter the cave, and now Fumi begins to mine with the pickaxe that he bought and gets some pretty rare gems, actually realizing that some of these gems could be used for more weaponry and maybe even some clothing that he can use to boost his defense. And then he realizes something. These monsters that are in this cave are no ordinary monsters. There is high level creatures here. A giant monster dog comes out of nowhere and attacks Naofumi without him looking. He drops his hammer and picks it back up and tries to smack the dog, but he has to change it back into combat mode. But during this time, the dog bites his other arm. Naofumi is in extreme amounts of pain, and Raphtalia is frozen in place. Naofumi screams out, saying that he needs her help, and she's scared, terrified in fact. Naofumi throws the hammer to the other hand and smacks the dog in the back, cutting him badly with the stainless steel part of his, well, hammer axe, or more or less his combat version of his, well, hammer, hitting him. But that's the only hit he'll get again. The dog creature steps on his other arm, and Naofumi screams in pain. When Raphtalia hears this, her instincts begin to go wild. She's letting Naofumi die. The only person that's actually cared for her, well, made it so that she wasn't sick anymore, bought her food, gave her a place to stay. What is she doing? She gets up with her stainless steel short sword and immediately stabs the dog. And that short sword does way more damage than any dagger or any, well, small sword she has in canon, destroying the dog. Frankly, killing it almost instantly, especially because Naofumi already wounded it. Naofumi is shocked by this, thinking that she wouldn't have got up like that as quick as she did, and she hugs him, saying and begging him to never leave her again, and that she doesn't want him to die. And Naofumi just smiles and pats her on the head and thinks that maybe she can trust Raphtalia, maybe even with his own life. After that thought, and after promising that, well, he will not leave her, a month of leveling and preparation for the next wave then occurs. Now Fumi obviously unlocks various other versions of his weapon, but none like the one he's been using. The half axe, half hammer works really well, especially with the material of stainless steel. He hasn't found anything too special other than stainless steel, but maybe he'll soon find other materials that are insanely good. During this time though, he actually decided to start making armor for himself. Maybe he can make a hybrid type of armor that could level up on its own. So he makes a nice cloak like how he had in canon, but it has a nice bright green gem in the middle of it. The green gem actually is kind of like the legendary weapons. It's as if, well, it can level up and upgrade as it goes. The actual more damage he takes and the more damage he inflicts, the armor will give various amounts of buffs. But in terms of, well, other weaponry, he decides to make Raphtalia that sword that he has been promising, upgrading her stainless steel sword to have a nice, well, blue gem in the middle of the handle. When he actually hands it over to Raphtalia, it seems like another, well, branch or a tree of upgrading awakens in his leveling up menu, and it seems to be Raphtalia's sword. And it asks if he wants to, well, pass on the permissions to Raphtalia, in which he does just that. Raphtalia is now able to see any upgrades she can add, being damage, magic, speed, strength, anything of that manner. And there's even special abilities that will slowly but surely gain itself. And she realizes that a big one is based on the magic she can control, and that has a lot to do with illusions. She was looking and she has a skill that is later on in the branch that looks like multiple people. Maybe she can make an illusion or maybe make clones of herself to fight. Now Fumi shrugs, saying that he's not so sure, but now that he knows that he can trust her, that he wants to give this to her. And he passed off the permissions for a reason, that it's her choice what path she wants to go down. She nods and thanks him, and they obviously continue getting ready for the first wave that's going to happen. Now Fumi and Raphtalia then arrive at the capital's cathedral, well, at its hourglass, in which measures the time, well, between the waves. They're waiting there and the other three heroes arrive, and, well, Itsuki and Ren actually greet Naofumi, saying that it's good to see him again, but Motoyasu says something other than that, says that he's actually not good, it's not good to see him again, and that he's practically useless in the feat of battle, and that it wouldn't matter in these waves. Now Fumi just ignores him, but Raphtalia is mad. Raphtalia pulls out her sword and points it at him and says to not talk about Master Naofumi like that. Motoyasu is confused at why she's calling him Master, and Raphtalia gets tapped on the shoulder to put the sword away. Now Fumi tells her that it's just fine, that he's just misguided and doesn't understand. He says that he does understand and that he's useless, and that Mine even told him that he doesn't know anything about this world. Now Fumi then cuts him off. But do you know about war? About sacrificing yourself? About, well, working every single day, slaving over an anvil to make sure that the warriors that are fighting get their weaponry? I'm sure you don't. Where you grew up, all you did was sit there and play video games. This is no video game, Motoyasu. This is real life. I hope you understand that, and understand that quickly. Both Raphtalia and Naofumi realize that the wave is in the next day and leave. They say goodbye to Ren and Itsuki, and they are both standing there shocked, realizing what he just said, that is true. This isn't necessarily a video game anymore. This is real for them. What would happen if they do die? So with that in mind, well, hopefully their actions will speak louder than any words they would hear, but they head off, or Naofumi and Raphtalia head off, and they begin to head over to the, well, village of Loot. They realize that, well, these villagers don't have a means of protecting themselves. So Naofumi says, that he's going to make them all weapons. It's not like they can, well, turn on him and kill him, luckily enough. But if he makes them all weapons, they should be able to fend for themselves, and Naofumi might even be able to make some protection barriers that would allow for them to, well, protect the village even better. So that's what he begins doing. For the next 12 to 18 hours, he gets supplies from loot, from the people there, from the mines, and he begins hammering away. Hammering. It's just like the good old days. The days that he would sit up all night hammering away at swords, shields, and various other things. And he actually is able to arm every single person there, well, with weapons. Besides, they're not stainless steel weapons, but they're still really good. Some with a dull-ish iron weapon, some cobalt, and various other things like that. And in this world, there's a lot of metals he doesn't even understand, and they have some good boosts to them. For instance, cobalt normally wouldn't be used for a weapon, but in this, it's not too bad. And now Fumi realizes that and tells them to be careful nonetheless. A weapon does not make them invincible, and they agree. They actually say that they're going to help Naofumi put up protective barriers around the area, that he can't do it all himself. He agrees and says that he doesn't know, well, amazing amounts of, well, protective barriers in terms of like gates and stuff like that, so the help would definitely be needed. They all nod and they begin helping Naofumi basically put up giant gates to protect the village. Naofumi personally cannot make these gates, but he knows how to somewhat. He can make wooden gates, stone gates, stuff like that, and with the help of the villagers, they actually finish it before the wave begins, eventually leading to, well, the final countdown of the wave. The wave begins, and with the other heroes wanting to join the fight with the main boss, Naofumi doesn't worry about that. Naofumi just wants to help the villagers. He feels that this, for one, will help him way more in the long run, but also the fact that these are the people he's supposed to be protecting anyways, not going to have fun with, well, defeating a giant boss. It doesn't matter. Various, well, skeletons, killer hornets, giant monsters begin arriving, cracking at the walls, but luckily the walls are pretty sturdy. The people that were actually given bows begin to rain arrows at those monsters, defeating them relatively quickly, even talking to Naofumi, saying that these weapons are extremely strong, but he says that it doesn't really matter how strong the weapon is, as long as the person who's using it is effective with it. They all nod and they begin to fend off the giant hordes of, well, monsters that are on their way. Now Fumi helps out if any of them slip through the cracks, and Raphtalia is moving in and out of the borders to make sure nobody gets flanked or hurt by any means. Gaining a decent amount of XP from this, actually, Raphtalia levels up quite a bit, and, well, the army from the kingdom arrive and they help with the effort in terms of protecting these villagers. Some of the knights actually aren't really wanting to help with this whole save the villagers thing, but many of them do decide to help Naofumi, and this wave goes pretty smooth. The preparations that Naofumi set in place actually helped a ton, and all the villagers say that they'll give back all the weapons so he can resell them, but he says that it's completely fine, as long as he can, well, have a hotel for free every time he comes in. They say that's completely fair, that these weapons are far more worth. And now Fumi says that it's truly his pleasure to help them, so all he really wants in return is a place to stay. Every so often, of course. They, of course, are happy to hear this, and then Naofumi and the rest of the heroes get a call up from the palace or the kingdom itself, basically to celebrate of their triumphant, well, victory. All of the people that basically involved Naofumi, the heroes, Raphtalia, head up the palace, in which they're more or less invited and treated to a state dinner, which Naofumi is okay about. He doesn't really care to go because he wants to get things done, but he doesn't really mind either way. That's until he'll regret thinking those words in general. Mine, somebody that, well, is bitter at the fact that Naofumi took away the weapon that she snaked underneath him, well, tells Motoyasu that Raphtalia is a slave. prompting him to challenge Naofumi to duel for her freedom. But Raphtalia immediately says that she doesn't want her freedom. Motoyasu says that, well, that's just ridiculous, that he's pressuring you. But Raphtalia cuts him off again, saying that she doesn't want her freedom and that she would fight instead of him if that's what he wants. He thinks that's ridiculous to hear and tells Naofumi that she shouldn't fight her own or her battles for Naofumi. And Naofumi says that it sounds ridiculous, that he's basically took Raphtalia out of slavery. Yeah, she has the slave crest still on, but she's still here willingly. And Raphtalia confirms this, saying that yeah, she wants to be here, and Naofumi also says that slaves are not illegal. Plus, she actually gets a boost from the slave crest. Well, Motoyasu isn't having it, saying that he still wants the duel, and that, well, if he wins, Raphtalia is set free. Raphtalia finds this ridiculous, but Naofumi says that he won't be able to get out of this anyways, so he might as well duel him. So eventually the duel is set up. Mano on mano. Naofumi versus Motoyasu then begins. This battle seems to be pretty even with, well, Motoyasu's obviously quicker start, especially with the fact that he starts with a fully active spear, and, well, Naofumi had to work for a more battle type of, well, hammer. The fact that his hammer didn't start as a actual weapon, he's more of a support hero, like he's actually referenced before. The fight begins with him having his stainless steel hammer, half of an axe blade, half hammer, and he actually can keep up with Motoyasu like it's nothing. The hammer is light as a feather for him, and frankly, the anvil just stays on his back. But the anvil can be used in creative ways. He actually has a couple special moves based around them. He takes off his anvil while they're fighting and he throws it on the ground, hammering the anvil hard as a shockwave of this weird magic begins to occur. And it seems as if when he did this, he shattered one of his gems, and the gems turned into this cloud of, well, magical dust that was kind of like a stunning type of dust, like a spore of, well, like something you would get from a poisonous plant. It's super interesting. Now, Fumi has not shown anything like this because frankly, it wouldn't be good against any undead monsters, but he does have a couple tricks up his sleeve that are very, you could say, non-lethal by any means. And while he's stunned, he hits him with the mallet side of his hammer, more or less knocking him out. Mine then runs over, saying that Naofumi must have cheated, that there's no way Motoyasu would have lost against him, but Naofumi just ignores her, saying that he has a long way to go, and that they shouldn't start fights for no reason, and that, well, if Raphtalia says that she doesn't want to go, she shouldn't have to go, and she doesn't have to be freed. That it doesn't make sense for them to butt in that much. They then just walk away, and the other two heroes actually agree with them. They begin to see that Mine is very manipulative, and that it's blatantly obvious that Motoyasu is more or less just being tricked by her. This eventually leads to Naofumi going to get his new, and well, hopefully new comrade, more or less a new person to add to the team. This is more or less just a way to thank Raphtalia for helping out and maybe lift some of the weight off of her. Eventually, Naofumi actually buys a gacha egg, in which he's kind of hesitant on initially, but decides that he might as well, that it's not too expensive. After a good bit of time and, well, a lot of caring for the egg, eventually while visiting Loot Village, the egg hatches, and the egg is a small dragon? He looks to see that this egg is definitely interesting, that it seemed to be, well, it looked like at least a filial type of egg, but it turned into a small, well, dragon. Naofumi picks up the dragon, and it's about the size of his palm, and the dragon hops on his shoulder and does a small little growl. Naofumi is surprised by this, and Raphtalia says that it must be, well, imprinted onto Naofumi, and that their relationship will be more or less bonded for life now. And Naofumi is pretty excited about this. A dragon. This is definitely interesting, and with his capabilities of building armor and such, he might be able to, well, give advancements to his future full-size dragon. After some time passes, not much actually, later in that day, Motoyasu and mine begin to declare the village of Loot under Motoyasu's rule, but Naofumi walks out and says that that sounds ridiculous, that, well, the limitations that they're setting, the heavy taxes, well, all of it would hurt them way too much, and that this Loot village needs to be left alone. Motoyasu says that fine, if he wants to keep them safe, then let's do a little race. Motoyasu will use his, well, dragon-esque mount, and Naofumi can find a mount for himself. Naofumi finds this ridiculous. He doesn't have any mount that he can ride on, as he can see. But Motoyasu says that doesn't he have a little dragon? Oh wait, it's too small to actually ride. The little dragon on Naofumi's shoulder walks up and taps Naofumi's hammer, and lands on the hammer. Naofumi then calls out her name. Safira, what are you doing? The dragon begins to grow, bigger, bigger, and bigger, until it's, well, the size more or less is mountable by all means, but obviously the dragon has the ability to fly. Naofumi looks at, well, Motoyasu, and Motoyasu is kind of shocked by this, and Naofumi says a deal is a deal, and a race is exactly what he'll get. So Naofumi hops on his dragon, and when the race begins, his dragon takes off flying around the track, and even with the magical, well, abilities of people trying to sabotage him, it doesn't matter. Naofumi wins by a landslide. He's easily overlapped him multiple times, and, well, the village of Loot is, well, kept exactly how it is. Luckily, because, well, frankly, Loot Village would not be able to handle any of these crazy taxes he wants to put, well, on this village. So, after actually racing, Naofumi gets off of Safira, and Safira shrinks back down into a manageable size. How big can you even get, Safira? Safira jumps off the hammer once again and grows immensely, almost the size of a building. Wow, I thought you would have to grow up for that, and you can just do it on command. Definitely interesting. Naofumi is shocked by this, but thinks that this is great. Now they can travel to new places easily, whenever they want. And Raphtalia thinks this is great as well, and pets Safira. Naofumi then, for the next couple days, begins working on something pretty important actually for, well, Safira herself. Trying to make, well, you could say, something that would fit her, but also expand when she grows. Eventually, he's actually able to create something like that with his hammer and his anvil, making a special armor that actually works kind of like his own armor, and luckily they won't have to go to some dressmaker by any means. Naofumi can just make special armor, well, himself. This then leads to, well, him finally meeting up with a special trader, giving him a ride and actually learning of various things, like, well, trading with various different villages. He's actually tasked to, well, by the trader to deliver a herbicide to a certain village. When he arrives, he sees that the village is overrun by a monster plant. This plant is definitely something of insane proportions. The plant is practically spewing out multiple monsters, killing villagers, and just overrunning the entirety of the village. He asks what happened and what even occurred for it to get this bad, and they explain that they were in a famine, that they needed food badly, but the spear hero Motoyasu came and ended the local famine. Yeah, that was until, well, the plant began to turn into a monster. Now Fumi shakes his head and begins to think that these, well, heroes, it seems, don't understand that they need to, well, follow through with a plan completely and not leave them out, well, these villages out to just die. So Naofumi tries to come up with a plan to hopefully advance this herbicide and stop this monstrous plant. And when he's talking about this to Raphtalia mostly, but also to Safira, which she is just a dragon and he's not sure if she can actually understand him, she actually begins to nudge her nose against the herbicide. Now Fumi is confused and then she eats the herbicide. What are you doing? That's the only thing. Oh my god, this is not good, is it? The dragon that goes by Safira begins to burp and it burps up the herbicide slightly. But then she begins to grow once again, and as she's growing, she walks out toward the giant plant. Where are you going now? Okay, let's go, Raphtalia. Raphtalia and Naofumi follow Safira out to see that she is in her, well, full dragon form at the biggest possible, well, dragon she can be at the moment. She walks over to the plant, well, and then eventually flies as Naofumi and Raphtalia hop on, and she begins to look at the plant and breathes this green fire. They both are confused and say that she's gonna kill everybody, but the fire doesn't actually burn anything. It seems like the fire and the pesticide or the herbicide were mixed together of some sorts in her digestive system, and actually when she erupted it out of her mouth, it actually made it so that it became a very strong herbicide that killed the plants. And they look to see how healthy the plants are, and it seems like the monster side of the plants were killed. The herbicide was able to limit the plant's evolution and actually keep it so that the plants would still be there, but not to the fact of, well, they turn into killing monsters. But luckily, with the monster plant completely defeated, it seems that this village can go back to normal and also not be in famine. So with that job completely done, now Fumi, Safira, and Raphtalia leave. They fly off and actually take a pit stop at a more nice hot spring. But when they arrive, they're greeted by somebody and they say that they actually cannot bring in, well, animals or whatever that is, can't bring in their dragon pet thing. And now Fumi says that I guess they'll have to go, but, well, Safira jumps off his shoulder and transforms into a little girl with horns on her head and dragon wings on her back. Now Fumi and Raphtalia are completely dumbfounded by this and confused, and they kind of poke her on the shoulder and ask if she's really Safira, and with a blank stare she looks at them and nods, saying that she is. When could you do this? I could have done this anytime, but nobody wanted me to. Nobody asked. Now Fumi is just at a loss for words, and so is Raphtalia. So they just go into the hot spring and, well, have a nice, well, bath and more or less have a relaxing day. Raphtalia and actually Safira go out and they look for some nice gift for Naofumi, especially for all the things he's done for them. Safira might have a bland face and, well, more or less bland reactions, but Safira actually does care a lot about, well, Naofumi and Raphtalia for that matter of fact. But they end up getting, well, something simple for Naofumi, nothing too crazy. They can't really think of anything too important for him, so they actually just get him brand new materials that they can basically put in the anvil. So that's what he does. With new metals that he actually doesn't really know much about, he upgrades his own weapon, upgrades Raphtalia's to a higher grade of steel, and also upgrades the armor that, well, Safira is wearing, which kind of turned into like a nice set of armor when she's in her human-like form. Now Fumi's not going to question it because it is kind of like magical armor, but he's still kind of confused. After the nice day at the hot spring, they actually leave and they end up making, well, it to a village that has a lot of disease, oddly enough. They ask what's going on, and they said that since the sword hero Ren killed a dragon nearby, it seems like the body was left just to rot, and it hasn't properly been disposed of, and well, they're kind of feeling the effects of this. And Naofumi says that he'll try his best to get on it as soon as possible, and he actually may be able to make something that will shield the village in the meantime, and at least until he can dispose of it. He begins working throughout the day, and it takes about 6 to 8 hours to gather all the materials and such to make this weird and odd barrier that more or less covers the entire village, and it has a magical border around it that blocks out actually this, well, disease that's coming through, or more or less just the wind that's picking up the rot from the rotting, obviously, dragon. So they end up going up, and they obviously decide that they're going to dispose of the corpse. So they all three head up, but they're met by something not very too pleasant. And well, Safira recognizes this quicker than anybody else. That dragon isn't really dead. What are you talking about? It's obviously dead. Well, technically it's dead, but you know, it's not actually dead. That makes no sense. You just sit. As Naofumi is arguing about it, the dragon begins to stand. See, I told you. Naofumi's eyes grow wide, and his hammer begins to change into its combat mode. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. He puts his anvil on his back, and well, Safira grows into the biggest dragon form she can, and Raphtalia takes out her sword. She grips their sword hard and gets ready for a fight. Now Fumi charges forward to slash at the zombie dragon's wings, cutting it slightly, but not injuring the zombie dragon very much. Well, Safira dives in as well, spraying her fire on the dragon, doing some substantial amount of damage. Raphtalia, on the other hand, decides that she'll use some of these abilities that she actually gained from using her new sword. She more or less begins to clone herself around the dragon and begins to strike it at different vital points, on the dragon. But the dragon's kind of a zombie, the vital points are definitely limited, so Raphtalia doesn't do much damage. Now Fumi realizes this and tackles Raphtalia out of the way as the dragon breathes fire at them and he gets burned in the back of him. Luckily, it didn't do a crazy amount of damage because of the armor he's wearing, and it's actually part heat resistant because of, their acquisition of Safira. The fact that his armor is more or less accustomed to their party members. So since they have a dragon on their team, his armor actually develops a resistance to fire. And it's the same thing with Raphtalia. Raphtalia has really good magical powers in terms of illusions and such like that it actually gives it magical capabilities. Now Fumi learned this a couple days ago and thought that it would be good to level it up and put it to use as much as possible. But even with that, taking a head-on dragon is not an easy thing to do. And he keeps conflicting with the dragon and fighting with the three of them, but he can't seem to, make it budge. But as he begins to lose slight hope, he realizes that they need to go literally all out. And, Raphtalia is all for it. She says that she has a move that will more or less drain her entirely of stamina, but it could end the fight right now. Now Fumi nods and says that he'll make sure to carry her out of here as soon as possible, and Raphtalia smiles, saying that she knows that he'll protect her. She puts her hands on both Safira and Naofumi, and all of them begin to replicate. It seems like she's making clone after clone of all of them, and they all stand there in wait of the dragon. With multiple dragons, or multiple Safiras, and multiple Naofumis, they attack. But they're not necessarily full power Naofumis and full power, obviously, Safiras. Only two of them are, aka the real ones. So they attack the dragon at full strength and begin to injure it really badly, and actually are on the brink of killing it, but can't seem to land that final blow. but out of nowhere, a slice of a sword comes through, as if it comes slicing through the air and cuts the dragon's head off to finish it off. Now Fumi looks up to see Ren, the sword hero. Unfortunately, they won't be getting, well, any XP really at all from the killing of this dragon, but luckily they were able to defeat it. Ren lands and basically says that he had a hunch that leaving this dragon here was not a good idea, and he remembered back what Naofumi said. Naofumi saying that this isn't a video game, this is real life for them. And he apologizes for his, well, being inconsiderate, and says that he'll help clean this up right now. So that's what happens. Ren, Naofumi, Raphtalia, and, well, let's just say Safira doesn't really help much. She kind of just sits there as they clean up the mess that, well, Ren made initially. He apologizes again and says that, well, this is probably, he won't be seeing him until the next wave, but he says that he'll make sure not to do anything like this again. Now Fumi nods and says that he's glad that, well, he can see how real this is, and Ren says that he's glad too. He leaves with the rest of his party as well, and now Fumi obviously helps dispose, and which they already disposed of the entire dragon, and they go down toward the village. And he explains that they more or less got rid of all of the dragon, and Ren actually came back to help as well. So if they're going to give any of the money, they should just give the money to Ren. They say if that's really a good idea. I mean, he did cause it in the first place, but he says it's fine. He makes plenty, and maybe in the future they can have a good alliance, and he'll come back and help them if they need be. So after the confrontation of all that, which wasn't really a confrontation, actually Ren was pretty useful, they head out once again. Being that they disposed of the dragon, and unluckily they didn't get much from it, now Fumi did get some dragon scales. It seems like he'll be able to use it for certain weaponry and armor, so that's at least a plus. Maybe actually really good armor, or at least upgraded armor for Safira. And when he relaxes for one day, he begins working on that, making this dragon scale armor for Safira, making it like an outer shell for her. Remember, her armor is more or less like a legendary weapon, obviously not as OP, but in the matter of fact that it can level up and more or less gain new abilities. So with this dragon scale, it actually allows Safira to more or less upgrade herself a little bit more. And now Fumi asks if she wants to do it herself, and she says that she doesn't care either way, but now Fumi says that if she really wants to, that he'll let her. She nods, and now Fumi passes on the permissions to her, and she basically begins to upgrade her armor and such, and she asks why can't she have a weapon, and he basically explains that she's never really in this human form, so it's kind of hard to give her a weapon. But she says, what about getting a weapon for her talons or her feet when she's a dragon, or maybe even her wings, that she can have blades on them. Now Fumi says that's a great idea, but that's also going to take a lot of time, so he'll try his best, and it would probably be just an addition to her armor. She says that is just fine. I mean, obviously in her bland voice, I don't think she really cares about much at all. I mean, she seems to care about Naofumi, but does she really care about anything else? But that's beyond the point. After some time passes, well, Naofumi and his group begin leaving, and eventually they meet a girl that is playing with some Flolials by the name of Melty. And, well, you know, Safira is pretty interested in her, walking over and waving her hand, and Melty comments that her horns are awesome and that they should totally be friends. So they actually play and hang out for the day, while Naofumi and Raphtalia do some other things that they wanted to handle in terms of obviously starting on the new addition to the armor for Safira, and also some other minor things like selling some items, getting some healing things, and other stuff like that. Eventually leading to, well, Melty actually following along for a small part of the journey. She isn't with them too long, but she says that she just needs to get back to Melremark, so they say that it's really not a problem to really take them back. Eventually they make it back, and now Fumi sees that it's a good time to probably get some things in order in terms of talking to Erhard for some weapon upgrades maybe, or at least some materials that he could be looking out for in the future. And also he wants to obviously keep working on this project for Safira, but also maybe it's time to get a new teammate. He's not so sure about it. He likes having 2 people, and maybe having a third would be a little overwhelming, especially with a, well, wave coming not too long from now. But he thinks that it might be a good time, and he asks Raphtalia about it, but Raphtalia says that who would they even bring on, and, well, should it really be another slave? So now Fumi decides to hold off on that for a little bit, and, well, during this conversation, he's approached by Motoyasu and Mine. He actually, unprovoked, attacks Naofumi, and Naofumi actually doesn't even dodge. Raphtalia blocks it immediately and kicks him away, spouting at him, saying that what is he doing, and what does he think he's doing attacking Naofumi like that? And, well, immediately Raphtalia has her sword drawn, and multiple duplicates surround, well, Motoyasu. Now Fumi pats her on the shoulder and says to calm down, that it's okay. He doesn't understand what he's doing, or at least he hopes not. Motoyasu says that this is ridiculous, that now he has 2 slaves, 1 girl and another one, that this is ridiculous. Raphtalia and now the girl right there. And now Fumi is kind of confused. You don't even know her name, do you? Like, why does this matter? And she was a dragon at one point. And Motoyasu is appalled by this, saying that there's no way that she was the dragon, but he's cut off by her changing into her giant dragon form. And Naofumi just facepalms. I told you, she was the dragon before. She's still a dragon. This is her human form. Why do you act like this? Why are you the only one that acts like this? Oh wait, it's because of her, correct? This is ridiculous. Mine says that, well, that Naofumi is a horrible person as well, having slaves but as she's about to continue and make up more and more lies, Melty cuts her off, saying that Naofumi is a great person. Has she not heard of all the things he's done so far? And on top of that, let in, well, Melty herself without even knowing who she was. Naofumi scratches the back of his head. Who are you then, Melty? I'm confused. Aren't you Melty? Melty kind of laughs at this and says that, well, she is the next in line for the throne. Next in line to be queen. She is a princess. Now, Fumi did not know this. He is baffled at this. And, well, funny enough, Safira knew this already and kind of said that it was pretty obvious. Like, have you seen her? But now Fumi just shakes his head and says that, well, he had no idea. And Mine says that that's ridiculous, that he can't be that good, that he must be brainwashing her or something. But Melty cuts her off again and saying that that is ridiculous, that the reason why Melty is not, well, up for being queen is because of her toxic personality, and that's blatantly obvious. Melty basically dismisses them and says that Naofumi is, well, under the graces of the royalty of the queen and the future queen as well, or the first princess in line, and she apologizes and says that she'd love to accompany them on future journeys as well. And obviously Naofumi accepts, asking if she can really hold her own. She smiles and says that she definitely can, and to not worry about her. So Naofumi nods and begins to get ready for, well, obviously the wave. With that in mind, he decides to head over with Raphtalia and Philo to see if they can get their class upgrades. But it's odd, the royal decree forbids his party from doing it, which is odd, but he does realize the name of the church. It is, well, more or less the bow, the sword, and the spear, and that's it. Whatever they have, or whatever grudge they had against the shield hero initially, is obviously getting carried off to him, and he's noticed that for a while now, but it is, well, unfortunate. This also then leads to him meeting with some of the royal guards, in which he never had a bad relationship with in the first place, and he obviously helps them out and gets some armor to help protect, well, the village of Loot for the next attack. But while scouting towns and stuff like that, Naofumi actually happens to come across some starving refugees who actually fled a revolution that was started by the bow hero. Itsuki actually helped, I guess, initially more or less save these people, but unfortunately, well, it didn't go very good. It seems that they were driven right back into famine again. It was like trading out more or less a tyrant for a tyrant. And Naofumi wants to make this apparent to him that this is absolutely ridiculous. So he helps them the most he can, getting them food and stuff like that, and also helping will like revive their culture and revive their food sources. But he can't do everything. He literally cannot, especially with the short amount of time, probably till the wave. So he eventually returns for that next wave, and he actually encounters Ren and Itsuki, talking to Ren, but then also talking to Itsuki. Itsuki basically accuses him of stealing his rewards, and Ren stops him right there and says that that sounds ridiculous, but Naofumi pulls out a bag and puts it on the table. These rewards were supposed to be for saving that place over there, right? That revolution you started? You know, you just traded a tyrant out for a tyrant. Like, you didn't help them. Your so-called revolution put them in jeopardy again. And Ren is shocked by this, and he begins to explain to Itsuki that he did the same thing to another village, that he heard another village, but he remembered what Naofumi said about this not being a video game. So he went back and helped, and luckily Naofumi was already there helping. And Itsuki, obviously with Ren more or less against him, he feels very guilty about this, and he apologizes and says that he's going to make it right. He's going to make sure that he makes it right after the wave, and he promises he's going to do so. And obviously Naofumi thanks him. With that all said and done and completely squashed and figured out, Naofumi and his party head to Erhard and more or less just chat about different materials that he was able to gather, and he absorbs them into his anvil. And obviously he doesn't have an infinite amount and he has to replenish them, but it does, well, help with that base amount. And he's been working on, well, the upgrade for Safira, so that's going to take a lot of more like stainless steel and stuff like that. And with that said, the next wave is in 24 hours, so he has a lot to do. He takes a lot of the time that he has upgrading people's gear, including his own, but more Raphtalia's and obviously Safira's, giving her the wings that she wanted, which she seems happy about, but you can't really tell if she's happy about, but that's beyond the point. And obviously it's time for, well, the wave. The wave begins, and Naofumi begins to easily defeat monsters after monster after monster, even meeting a retired adventurer that is extremely impressive, and he basically passes on the worries of Loot Village down to more or less her and the rest of the knights. And the thing is, though, he's worried about the other heroes. There hasn't been any progress, so he hops on, well, obviously Safira with Raphtalia right behind him, and they fly off. And when they arrive, it seems like the heroes are more or less just fighting a Dutchman and, well, not paying attention to much at all. And they're trying to figure out different ways of basically facing the boss, and they don't know how to defeat it. But luckily, Raphtalia is easily able to expose the Soul Eater that obviously is the main boss. Now Fumi then more or less fights with Safira and Raphtalia to defeat the Soul Eater, in which was pretty simple. But the thing is, Naofumi is slowly but surely realizing that his companions are stronger than him, or at least that's what it feels like. It feels like he is a actual support hero. He doesn't feel like he's making that much of a difference personally. He's gonna have to deal with this internal conflict though, at least until after the wave. They kill, obviously, the massive Soul Eater, but the thing is, well, it doesn't seem to be ending. Nothing seems to be ending, and it's kind of odd. That's until, well, until another Soul Eater appears, but they're not the ones that defeat it. This Soul Eater did look stronger than the previous, but someone insta-killed it. A woman in a black kimono wielding two-bladed war fans. the true enemy was then revealed. And that girl, or that woman, was the name by Glass. Glass was there to defeat them and end their lives for, well, whatever reason they aren't sure of. She easily defeats the other 3 heroes in the parties, and now Fumi realizes that he won't be able to actually stand a chance. Raphtalia and Safira both take fighting stances ready to fight her, and Glass can tell that they are extremely strong. But she looks at Naofumi. You don't seem very strong. What are you anyways? I feel like you're supposed to be wearing a shield, but you have an anvil on your back and a hammer made of stainless steel? Interesting, very interesting. Glass attempts to obviously attack with long-range attacks, and well, they're able to actually fend her off a good bit. But Naofumi realizes that he's outclassed. He has powerful abilities and powerful strengths, and obviously he was able to defeat Motoyasu, but that wasn't really an accomplishment if we're being honest. He was able to defeat him because of his overconfidence, and well, frankly, just he was outmatched in that fight. But this is different. This woman is strong, and this woman is ready to kill. But with that in mind, they were ready to finish her off as well. Raphtalia, Safira, and now Fumi are ready to try to defeat her, but as they're gonna try to make their final push, it seems like the wave begins to restrict her abilities and begins to drag her away. She is enraged and says that she'll be back and that there will be a worse outcome in their future. But unfortunately, she gets away. And maybe it was fortunately. But now Fumi does ponder what the wave's true limits are and what will come, well, next after the next wave, and they're summoned back to the castle. Obviously, the king thanks Naofumi and the rest of the people for their good work, but even Ren and Itsuki say that Naofumi did most of it, or at least his party did. And Naofumi nods and thanks Raphtalia and, well, Safira. Thanks them both for, well, carrying the load that he couldn't. They both say that the only reason why they can actually do all these things is because of him. The weaponry he makes and all the support he gives, that's why she's able to, or they're able to do that. But he shakes his head and says that he's one of the heroes and that it feels like he's doing nothing, that he needs to be able to do more. And well, the king doesn't really remark at this at all, but now Fumi does have something in mind and decides to leave with Raphtalia and obviously Safira. While he's leaving, a woman covertly approaches Naofumi, warning him about a church conspiracy against him, or at least against the shield hero. But when you replace the shield hero, they're not going to respect you for what you are. And obviously Naofumi has questions, but gone in an instant, so it doesn't even matter. But with that said, he actually waits for the heroes to, well, the other heroes to come out. Ren and Itsuki, who are talking to each other, arrive, and Naofumi stops them. Listen, we're all outmatched here. You can say what you want about me and my party. My party did most of that work. And yes, they have my gear, but here's the thing. If I make gear for you both, what do you say? They both say that obviously they'd accept it, but why is he offering this? Listen, it seems like the best I can do is more or less support, which is frustrating. I'm hitting my wall here, my limitations, and I feel like there's something to this, that there's more to the heroes than we believe. I see. It's an interesting theory, but don't you think if you make us something that it will restrict our leveling? I'm not sure. We can test it out though. I can make you armor that is levelable if you want, and obviously that would probably be the best idea, and we'll go from there. If you can't level, then you just take it off. Don't worry about it. But if you can, then it should give you an insane boost to your power. They both are completely for it. I mean, obviously, maybe this will also eventually help Naofumi, but in general, it's going to help the world that they live in right now. So they're all for it. They ask him if he needs materials and what materials does he need, and he gives them a blueprint of depending on what they want. If they want a full body armor, then he has to have certain blueprints. If they want a full body armor but still like flexibility in their arms and legs, he needs that as well. In which they both want exactly that. They want body armor but flexibility in their limbs, obviously. And he says that he needs certain stainless steels and certain cloth and certain, well, dragon scales if they have extra. That it could be one heck of armor if they have extra of them. And Ren says that he does. And that luckily he kept some of the dragon scales from the zombie they more or less butchered. So over the next couple hours, and well, now Fumi just keeps working and slaving over this armor, eventually finishing, giving it to both Itsuki and Ren, and they say that they'll be right back. They're gonna go test the armor out and then come back, which they go their separate ways and do just that. They come back and inform that it actually worked. It seems that they're still gaining experience, which is kind of perfect for a scenario like this, and that sounds great for Naofumi. Naofumi explains that he has things to do now, more things to do than obviously normal, and well, if they need anything else, let him know. But the only thing is, he doesn't really want to make things for their entire party. They ask why, and if they paid him, would he do it? And he says no still. He says that spreading himself that thin wouldn't really make sense. And well, obviously, he doesn't necessarily trust their entire party. They both say that, obviously, that they trust their party, but they can see why he wouldn't after the incident with mine. And well, they say that's just fine. That their party doesn't necessarily need special weaponry, but having the extra, well, boost for the heroes is what matters. And then they say that, well, his party is far strong enough, basically, to compensate for everybody else. He nods and says that he hopes so, and he more or less then heads off. This then leads to actually a meeting with Melty. Melty explains that she wants to go on this journey with him, so she followed him, and she brought along some knights. But it's kind of odd. Even now Fumi can feel that there's this eerie feeling in the air. And Melty is confused. And she asks what they're talking about. And well, the guards begin to try and kill Melty. This isn't good. It seems like Melty is in a situation where, I guess, someone wants to kill her. They quickly defeat the guards and send them packing. But Naofumi knows exactly who's trying to kill him, or kill her. It's obviously her sister. It's obviously Melty. Melty doesn't want to believe this, but he says that, believe it or not, it's obviously the truth. He then tells her that they need to go to Shield Frieden, that Raphtalia and Safira need their class upgrades if they want to make sure they can stay ahead in terms of the waves. So she can either come with them or go back to the kingdom and get killed. Melty kind of shakes at the remark and nods. And well, Safira punches him in the side a little bit, saying to not be so mean. When did you care about everyone's feelings? I always cared about everyone's feelings. Interesting. Now Fumi then obviously decides to protect Melty. And obviously Raphtalia and Safira will protect her the best they possibly can too. And they obviously get accused of kidnapping her. I mean, they kind of have some rigged hourglass ball that shows that, which is absolutely ridiculous, leading to them, well, more or less going through this forest and going through a hike more or less in the mountains to hopefully reach a nearby Siltvale. But at night, a loose rock alerts some nearby guards, and the other three heroes arrive. As Melty tries to explain the situation though, her sister begins to say that that's ridiculous, that she's being brainwashed or something, that it doesn't make. But the other two heroes realize what's happening and look at Naofumi, and they both get in front of the guards. It seems like you all tried to trick us. Itsuki then regards as well that they obviously did, and that they should let Naofumi go. And well, Mine says that's ridiculous, and Motoyasu says the same. And Ren says that Motoyasu has been wrapped around her finger this entire time. And well, Naofumi is the only one that's been able to help anybody. So, this sounds ridiculous. Naofumi kidnapping Melty, for what reason? And Melty is even saying that she's fine. But now you want to make up that he can brainwash her? Melty, or Mine, doesn't really know what to say. She's at a loss for words and a loss for more or less everything. And Naofumi just kind of nods at Ren and Itsuki and throws them something. You can figure that out, correct? Sorry, we gotta go. The four of them escape, and well, they're actually met by the anonymous woman once again, and Naofumi knows who she is. Well, sort of. At least knows that she's the one that warned him about the church. She says that the queen wants to have a meeting with him and see him, well, as soon as possible. But Naofumi says that they really need to go to, well, get their class upgrades, so he'll have to postpone that. But the change of plans will happen pretty quickly, eventually leading to obviously Naofumi, well, kind of not being able to get into Siltfeld, because the royal decree still thinks that Melty is somehow kidnapped, even though two of the heroes vouched for him. But with, obviously the manipulation of Mine, and obviously with Motoyasu still there, it was enough for them to more or less say that Naofumi was still a kidnapper. So with basically no choice, Naofumi then obviously heads off to see the queen. Melty actually knows a nobleman nearby, so they actually head over there first, and well, by surprise, they are met by him pretty quickly, bringing them into his manor, and actually they inform him of this situation, saying that they might still come after them, but there's no guarantee on that either. They might not. So they actually take a rest, but unluckily enough, when they stay the night, well, the manor is raided, and the nobleman is arrested, and Melty decides that it would be best for her to, well, get escorted out of the manor to save the rest of them and to make sure they don't get caught. But Raphtalia sees something. Raphtalia sees someone from her past, someone that beat her bad, someone that, well, would abuse her when she was in shackles, when she was a slave. Now Fumi is obviously calming her down and basically says that Melty must have a plan in the works and that they'll go and save her right now, but not only that, they'll defeat whoever this person is. They all head over to exactly where they are, in which they see some very, very horrible things, leading them into a castle, basically infiltrating there, and well, Raphtalia is face to face with Rabier, and this man, well, is not a good person by any means. The anxiety Raphtalia holds for him is ridiculous, and Naofumi tries to calm her down, saying that it's not worth it. It's not worth. But as he says this, well, Safira kind of breathes fire on him and burns him pretty bad. See, I helped you. He was not very good to my, well, sister Raphtalia, so I decided to take matters into my own hands, Master Naofumi. Naofumi just rolls his eyes. Yeah, that's fine. Raphtalia pats Safira on the head as she proceeds to kick Rabier unconscious. This then leads to them obviously leaving. They don't really care, and actually Raphtalia pities him, that he's begging for mercy in the first place. He's barely conscious at all. And this then leads to Raphtalia obviously looking through these old cells that she remembers from her past. But her past catches up with her pretty quick, finding a demi-human survivor, her old friend, and she breaks down in front of him and obviously says that that she's here to save him and that she would never abandon him. So her friend is saved. But there's another problem that is going to occur very quickly. Rabier is obviously still alive, and he frees a sealed away ancient Tyrannosaurus-like dragon monster, which promptly kills him, which Naofumi kind of sighs at, which is frankly just ridiculous, and they begin to run. They both hop on, well, obviously Safira, with Raphtalia's childhood friend, obviously, and they take off. And Raphtalia says that they should be able to defeat him if, obviously, they work together, and they do kind of what they did against the dragon. But Naofumi says that they might be stronger since then, but the dragon was a whole different monster. This is different. That's, well, until he begins to sense something. Hear something? It seems like, well, something is telling them to bring him to a large lake. They see a bright light, and, well, a giant Filolial queen appears. They're shocked at this, and Fumi tells, well, Safira to take a sharp turn and blast at the Tyrannosaurus Rex right now. And they do just that as the Filolial queen basically pile drives the monster into the ground, killing it. And, well, let's just say Naofumi is extremely impressed. They land, and obviously Safira changes back into her regular human form, or, well, her human form, it's not really her regular form, and Raphtalia is there as well with her childhood friend. And they're greeted by the Filolial queen, who takes her human form as well, introducing herself as Fitoria. And Fitoria basically brings them all to her sanctuary, in which they rest and relax. And Naofumi begins to, well, have a chat with Fitoria about various things, about Safira and about, well, himself. She begins to ask about what is he exactly. She knows that he's a hero, but, well, he seems different. He should be a shield hero, correct? He nods and says that that's what everyone's been saying, that he was taken from a time where, well, he didn't know all this video game thing, all this video game-like stuff. At least that's what he believes it to be. He says that this world is not only brand new to him, but the functioning of it is brand new as well. He would make weapons for war efforts, for other people. And Fitoria smiles. That's perfect. What? How is that perfect? You, Naofumi, are the answers to all our questions. There's a reason why you were sent here. Huh? But I can't even fight my own battles. They have to fight them for me. Yes, that's fine though, Naofumi. Everything you make makes a difference. And it's obvious now. I can see it. This is great. Listen, I've been protecting these other nations, but I can't protect them for long. They're outgrowing me. So the other heroes need to be ready to fight them as well. Now, Fumi, you are, well, the gateway to that, exactly. He asks, how is that? And, well, she explains that the world and the entire world is being attacked, not just Melremark. And Fitoria says that obviously she's been protecting based on the last hero's wish who raised her. But she knows that she'll perish soon. And it's an obvious scenario. But with the help of him and the other heroes, they can, well, maybe save everybody. And that is why Naofumi is what he is. That's why he's the blacksmith hero. Naofumi did not even think about it this way. He never has. Actually, this entire time he's felt kind of bad. And this has been arising for a good time now. That he feels underwhelmed. That everyone else does the work for him. But Naofumi doesn't realize how much hard work he's putting in. He's putting in for these people so that they can survive these wars. So that they can survive these attacks. And Fitoria makes that obvious. Very obvious. And she says that they need to unite the heroes. And Naofumi says that he's more or less united with two of them. but not all of them. The other one doesn't really like him very much. Fitoria says that all she wishes is for, well, them to all be one again. Them all work together, and eventually we'll all be strong enough to protect everybody. And that, well, maybe she can finally rest easy. And Naofumi smiles and begins to tear up a bit and says that that's really all he's ever wanted when he was growing up. He was hoping that maybe he would make one broadsword, one katana, one sharp dagger, and that would be the ending of the war. And Fitoria hugs him slightly and says that he's been through a lot. She can tell. But now it's time to really buckle down. And that she has an idea to even make his party stronger. The next morning, Fitoria takes Melty hostage. And more or less takes Naofumi hostage as well. She forces Raphtalia to not move 1 inch. And she forces, well, Safira to fight her in her human form. Safira doesn't want to, well, abide by this by any means, but Fitoria says that she doesn't have a choice. So their little fight begins, and Fitoria outclasses her by a mile, but she wants to see how strong she is completely. Eventually, realizing how strong, well, Safira is, Safira lands a kick and then a punch on Fitoria's face without insane amount of struggle. But obviously she was pretty much outclassed if Fitoria went all out, even in her human form. But these actions that she's seen from them are impressive. Now Fumi even says that he, well, apologizes that this was a test and he couldn't, well, go against what Fitoria was saying, or it wouldn't make sense. And Fitoria smiles, saying that she wants to make, well, funny enough, a non-Filolial the next in line for Filolial Queen, but that she can call it the Dragon Queen. And obviously this is insane, and well, Safira asks, what does this even mean, and how will this change anything? And she says it will change a lot. Fitoria says that her power will be, well, far greater than she can possibly imagine, as a calyx stands up from her head. And Safira is confused by this and says that now her hair kind of looks weird, that she already has horns. Why does she have a calyx standing up now? Fitoria kind of smiles at this and says that they will definitely be great heroes, and they'll definitely make a difference. After all of this occurs, they head off once again to obviously try and reconcile with the last hero they need to talk to. And Fitoria takes them to him. Motoyasu and, well, mine are then waiting for them. Now Fumi tries to talk to him, explaining that they all need to work together, but he gets cut off instantly, and Motoyasu says that this isn't time for, well, chatter, and this isn't time to, well, talk it out, that he still has Melty. He finds this ridiculous, that it was already proven that he didn't kidnap her, that this isn't the time to do this. And he tries to explain that waves are going to get stronger and stronger, and all around the world is getting attacked. They need to work together. He already has Ren and Itsuki on his side to work together, but why is it taking him this long to realize? Motoyasu then says no, that he must be brainwashing them too, and according to mine, that's true. And now Fumi is just haphazardly trying to explain to them that that is ridiculous, until a magical barrier is thrown up around them, and, well, mine says that they're going to fight, and that fight is going to be until someone drops. And now Fumi finds this ridiculous until he feels a slight tug on his shirt. What is it? Safira begins explaining that she can sense something coming. Something massive. Something. She begins to panic, the first time he's ever seen her actually have emotions, and she says that he needs to break the barrier now, that they all need to go now. And he realizes the urgency, throwing his anvil on the ground and smashing his hammer into it, and a cloud of dust begins to neutralize part of the barrier, and his team runs out. He tells the rest of them including Motoyasu's group, that they need to run out as well. It seems like something's coming. A giant blast of some sorts is on its way currently. And Motoyasu says that's ridiculous, that this must be a plan to deceive them, that he even heard about Ren and Itsuki dying as well because of him. And now Fumi has no idea what he's talking about, but he screams to him again to go. Now Fumi is putting himself in the line of fire at this point. And Safira even says it. She screams to him saying that he needs to leave if they won't. But he needs to get out because he'll die if he doesn't. They need to go now. He screams for them just to run away a good distance so that they don't get caught in it. And they say that they don't want to leave him. Not yet. She begins to grow into her dragon-like form and is tempted to jump back in and basically cover him with her armor. But he says not to take another step and don't move. And with the slave crest, she can't listen. She has to listen. She can't move on her own. And well, this isn't good though. Now Fumi is ready to risk his own life to save these people that don't even like him, that hate him. He looks up and begins to see a glimmer of light and realizes that the blast is about to reach it. He says screw it, taking off part of his armor, taking the gem from the armor that he has and throwing it toward Motoyasu. It sticks to his armor and his armor begins to, well, advance quicker than anything he's ever seen, and a barrier is put above them. He's using more or less the power that he has, combining it with the power Motoyasu has to make a barrier to protect them. He looks up and he basically smashes his anvil one more time to put a barrier above him, but that barrier is nowhere near as strong as the one he put up for Motoyasu. Nowhere near as strong as the armor that he once was wearing, or at least the boosted armor he was wearing, and the blast hits him directly on the head. The blast comes barreling down and strikes them. Both that Raphtalia and obviously Safira are completely and utterly taken back by this, and once the blast dissipates, now Fumi is on the ground and Motoyasu's group is luckily, well, intact, and now Fumi is almost, well, seems to be dead. From his view, he looks up and all he sees is blur. He sees nothing. And he looks around and he hears his name. He hears Raphtalia and Safira running over, calling his name. Master Naofumi, are you okay? Master Naofumi, say something. They begin to drag him away to safety as someone else arrives on the battlefield. Naofumi can barely tell what's happening. His eyes are just glazed over and he's taken too much damage. And Motoyasu is in complete shock. Mine is standing there and looks toward the enemy and realizes who this is. It's the Pope. Mine realizes her mistake. Motoyasu realizes that he just did something horrible. That he just more or less killed or almost killed someone that was trying to protect them. He takes off the thing that, well, Naofumi gave him. The armament boost, more or less, that he has on all his armor, and puts it on Naofumi. And Raphtalia asks what is he doing, but he says that that's how Naofumi saved them, putting it on him, and well, his stats begin to climb back up, and luckily it was just in time. The armor he has is able to, well, restore some of his HP and also his defense stat. The entire blast destroyed his stats, or more or less destroyed him, and lowered his stats like crazy for the time being. He's dragged away to safety, but as he's about to get dragged away, well, the Pope begins to flaunt his weapon, saying that this right here is, well, the ancient weapon that he replicated of the 4 cardinal heroes, that now Fumi is not a true cardinal hero, and that now it's time for them to die. He points the weapon at him, but luckily, as he does this, Ren and Itsuki come out of nowhere to bat it away. Itsuki shoots an arrow straight at the weapon, hitting it away so that it basically shoots it somewhere else. Ren slices at the Pope but isn't able to hurt him. The Pope has tons of people more or less powering this weapon alone, and now Fumi is in critical condition. Ren and Itsuki apologize for being late and see that now Fumi is practically down for the count, and they look at Motoyasu. And Motoyasu shakes his head and is mad at himself For the first time, he's thinking for himself. He walks over and stands by the other two heroes and apologizes, saying that if he didn't have to protect him from the blast, Naofumi would be on his feet with them currently right now. But now he realizes something. He realizes that he needs to help. Naofumi then reaches more or less into his anvil, oddly enough, and Raphtalia and, Safira tell him to calm down and relax, that he needs to recover. He gives them something and points at Motoyasu, and he points at his own, more or less his own armor, basically saying to give it to Motoyasu and, to put it on his armor, that this should help him. He's still on the ground, but using his hammer, he's able to stand up, and, Raphtalia runs over and slaps it on his armor, and then runs off toward Naofumi once again. Ren, Itsuki, and, Motoyasu stand there in wait of the next attack, and right when the Pope goes to attack, they all three attack him, trying to more or less counter the Pope's attacks, and, it's not easy, but it's a lot easier than it would have been without the special armor they're currently wearing, without the help of Naofumi. Naofumi gets to his feet luckily and tells Raphtalia and Safira that it's time, that they're both stronger than he is, and that's pretty obvious. And he says that it's time, for them to be the heroes in this story. The Pope then smirks and begins changing the scenery once again, making it so that, they're in this odd looking cathedral of some sorts, and they're all entrapped once again. And now Fumi says that this is the last ditch effort, that this is where he gets stopped. He puts the anvil on his back and basically limps using his hammer, and Raphtalia and Safira say that they have this handled. They both dash in with the other heroes, and you can tell that they are keeping up with even the cardinal heroes. Raphtalia and Safira have grown substantially over this time. Not only grown because of, Fitoria, but also grown because of the armor, the weapons they're wielding, and various other things. And it's pretty blatantly obvious who's going to come up on top in this battle. The Pope wants to leave everything out on the field, more or less donning the evil expression he always holds, and begins to say that he'll sacrifice all his loyalists to make sure they all die. Raphtalia multiplies everybody there in a last-ditch effort to defeat them, multiplying herself. Obviously, Safira, Motoyasu, Ren, and even Itsuki. They all send a barrage of attacks toward the Pope, and with all their special abilities, they're able to defeat him. Even with, obviously all the loyalists on his side. The Pope endangered so many lives, but finally he was defeated. Finally, now Fumi can sit down and rest for a second, making it so that everyone was safe. Safira, Raphtalia, Ren, and even Itsuki run over to him and ask if he's good, and he says that he's just tired. They look at his body and can tell that he's hurt pretty bad. Substantially, in fact. He'll be out for at least a couple days to recover. And as they begin to think about this, he passes out. He wakes up later on after, about a week of recovery, and he wakes up to the Queen standing at the edge of his bed with his party, obviously, and actually the heroes as well. She begins to apologize for the trouble that her daughter caused them, but luckily he made it out okay, and it seems like he solved everything with the heroes. And Ren, Itsuki, and even Motoyasu agree, and Motoyasu apologizes to him, saying that he really messed up, that he was locked in this idea that he was so bad, but he was willing to just sacrifice himself to make sure that, Motoyasu and his party would live. It's as if he didn't even care about his own life. And now Fumi kind of chuckles at this. I mean, I did live in war, Motoyasu. I would make weapons for other people to fight, and I would always think that maybe that next weapon I make would save us. would save them from dying. I would have to watch a lot of people go into battle and die. I was just on the back line. So now this was kind of my way of protecting people the best I possibly could. Motoyasu feels even worse by hearing this, and well, the queen says that there will be action put against the king and mine. But Naofumi says that he doesn't really care about that. They have things they need to deal with and things to put in place. So that's exactly what he's going to do. They don't have the whole, well, officially changing mine into, the horrible words that they end up calling her, because that's what she is. But mine realizes her mistakes, and Naofumi only asks that he stays far away from her, that he doesn't want to deal with her by any means. Luckily, eventually it leads to the Three Heroes Church getting abolished and all the things that Naofumi wanted in the first place to happen. It then leads to obviously Naofumi's party then going to the Dragon Hourglass, finally to get their class upgrades, in which Fitoria's blessing is going to be enacted for both Raphtalia and obviously Safira. This happens, and unluckily enough though, the class upgrades is kind of odd. The ritual kind of fails in a way, but it's actually good. They get a way bigger boost in levels, both Raphtalia and Safira, and well, it ends up working out for the best. Raphtalia and Safira and Naofumi then have a meeting with the other three heroes, and he tells obviously them that he wants his party to be there as well, because frankly they're stronger than him in terms of the physical aspect. The four heroes have their private meeting in which they share ideas how to basically train and other things like that, and they actually have a productive conversation. And Naofumi explains that he wants to actually give everybody on their teams equipment, but to realize that when he does this, he has the power to revoke it, and that they need to keep them in line at all costs. There can't be people that think otherwise and think this person's better or this person's better, because they all need to be in sync here. And obviously Ren and Itsuki agree, and Motoyasu agrees as well. They say that they agree completely, and that they'll make sure to keep everybody in line, and that they'll make sure to thank Naofumi for all the help. And Naofumi does just that. He makes armor and weapons for them, and they're not going to be boosted as much as obviously Raphtalia and Safira. They've been training with that armor this entire time. They've been training with these weapons the entire time. And frankly, they have a lot more potential than some random, party goers on the other heroes' teams. And even the other heroes realize that and recognize that. With that all set in line, the queen then begins to explain what this meeting is truly about. Since Naofumi was able to bring them all together, which is perfect and what they need, she wants to talk to them about the Calmira Archipelago event. An event that will give boosted experience points and give an opportunity to level up before the next wave. All the heroes then are super pumped for this, and Naofumi especially. He wants to be able to catch up and really get ahead as much as he can right now. So he copies everything that the other heroes have told him to do in terms of leveling up and stuff like that, and also talks to Erhard about certain materials that he may or may not have, in which he puts in his anvil and pays Erhard whatever he seems fit. Eventually then leads to obviously Naofumi leaving on a ship with the rest of the heroes, meeting a pair of travelers. And these pair of travelers are definitely interesting. He begins talking to them, and their names are both Lark and Therese. He's not sure, but they seem off. They seem odd, but they do seem pretty powerful. So he, obviously tells them his name. He says that his name is Naofumi, and they say the person that, was supposed to be the shield hero but isn't the shield hero. They find it ridiculous that he's using an alias like that, but Naofumi kind of just ignores it and says that that's fine as well. And they eventually then arrive at the XP grinding place across the archipelago, and they begin to, well, train. The XP grinding goes amazing for everybody, and they even meet up with Lark and Therese after a while and begin training with them as well. Now Fumi realizes like these people are very strong, and maybe he should give them a special weapon as well, or maybe special armor, because they kind of do have their own specialty weapons they like using. So he even offers this, says that he can make them armor, special armor that they can level up in, and they obviously agree to this, something that would be that amazing. And he also says that he can even make, well, the lovely lady some special gems, because he sees like what she's been using. She is all for it, and that's what Naofumi does. She even begins to cry at the fact that of what he gave her, in which she gave him all her money. With that done and completely dusted, Naofumi and his party decides to just take a day to relax on the beach. But during this time, Safira is out swimming and sees something odd, an undersea temple. Naofumi, out of curiosity, decides to go check it out with Raphtalia and Safira, and they investigate it, finding it completely odd. It's like another dragon hourglass, and it resides there, and it's linked to Kalmyra, and it says that the next wave is in 48 hours. Learning of this, now Fumi jumps straight into action, going immediately to the queen, warning her about this to amass a naval fleet as soon as possible. So that's exactly what they do, but on top of this, now Fumi begins to, well, craft certain, well, things for each separate ship. Specialty cannons and specialty, well, armament on the ships so that they don't instantly sink if something really big comes. And he doesn't have much time to do so, but with the support of the queen and all the materials she can provide, it's easy enough. He has the materials for it, it's really just hard work. So for the next 45 hours or so, and give or take some sleep obviously, he makes these ships that are way stronger, or at least gives armament to these ships, gives them specialty cannons, harpoons, stuff like that to make sure that they could win this next wave, especially on short notice. Raphtalia and, well, Safira even can tell that Naofumi is pretty tired and drained, and he explains that he's just fine, he just needs some rest before the next wave begins. So that's what he does. He sleeps and he's woken by the next wave about 30 minutes from the start. They all begin to sail on their naval fleet, and while sailing they see Lark and Therese sailing in as well. While the navy fights the smaller creatures during this wave, the heroes will fight the giant boss monster that will arrive, and this will go exactly to plan. Eventually the giant fish monster appears with sharp, razor sharp teeth and begins to try to crash into the boats that they have. Luckily, even the cannons that Naofumi made are able to hurt the fish. But it seems that Therese and, well, Lark are kind of shocked by this. It seems like everybody has these upgraded weapons or armor. Therese and Lark even see this, looking at their chests, seeing the upgraded things that were given to them by Naofumi, and begin to think that they might be outclassed here, but they don't really have a choice. They have to take that next step, and maybe eliminating Naofumi would give them the opportunity to take out the rest of them. Maybe his gear will dissipate when he dies, or maybe something like that. This is all thought of by Lark and Therese, or at least they're chatting about it until, well, the spear hero Motoyasu and the sword hero Ren stab their blades into the giant fish, killing it. Being that Naofumi has practically given everybody his help, it's like an extension of him. They're all getting boosted XP, but Naofumi still thinks in his head that he personally isn't strong. But he hasn't really fought anybody in a long time. Maybe he is stronger, or maybe he's just that support hero he thinks he is. This then leads to, well, Lark and Therese taking that step forward, attacking Naofumi. Immediately Raphtalia and Safira jump in front of them and blast them away as soon as possible. Naofumi jumps back and switches his hammer, and they both tell him that they can handle them right now. Naofumi looks at them and then points at the chest of both of them, of, well, Lark and obviously Therese, basically saying that they have armor on that's his. Raphtalia realizes this and knows exactly what he wants to do and looks at Safira. They both charge in at Lark and Therese, going to strike them in the chest, and as they do that, their armor crumbles. Lark and Therese's armor has been deactivated, and they take a brutal hit by both Safira and Raphtalia. They are basically slung backwards and forced to slightly retreat to another ship that they actually will see that is completely empty, eventually leading to Glass once again showing up. Glass, standing there, is looking at everything and realizes that it seems that these heroes realize their mistake, realize that it's, well, time for them to work together. Lark doesn't know what to do. Lark thought they weren't on the same page, that this should have been easier than this. The spear hero, Motoyasu, charges in, dashing at Lark, and it seems like even him, he's able to keep up with Lark. Ren charges in as well, attacking Therese, and Glass is at a loss for words. It wasn't supposed to go like this. How are they so damn strong? Naofumi smirks and hears the frustration from the other heroes and smiles. He says that once they started working together, this whole, well, killing the heroes for Glass became a lot harder. Naofumi realizes that just as much as he's be able to attack somebody, just as much he's able to support somebody, it all matters. Defense matters. Protection matters. Fitoria told him this, and it was hard for him to get a grasp around it, that teaming up meant this much. He knew that much, at least, that teaming up would help, but he didn't realize how much of an effect he was truly having. But right in front of him was Raphtalia and Safira, the two people that he was impacting the most, the two people that were on the level of Lark, Therese, and Glass, just because of him. Everything he was given has given them, everything they've done together has gotten them to this point. Fitoria, his armor, the weapons he provided, the time that, well, he got Raphtalia from the slave market, everything led up to now. Everything led up to protecting everybody here. Fitoria wanted to protect everybody. That's what her old, well, owner taught her. The old person that was here, a hero, in fact. Fitoria doesn't remember much, but she does remember that Naofumi has very similar ideals to that person. And Naofumi stands up and points his hammer at Glass, Therese, and Lark. He tells them to leave right now, that they're not going to give them a second chance, that if they stay, well, they'll die here and their home world will not be saved. But if they go, maybe they can give themselves another chance at it. But this isn't the place that they want to be. Not here, not ever. Now Fumi stands there, and they say that on a personal one-on-one, well, now Fumi would lose. He's not strong enough. But Raphtalia cuts him off and says that the only reason why they're winning is because of Naofumi, because of the help that they've provided him. And, well, Safira obviously confirms this. Ren nods in agreement, and so does Itsuki, saying that everybody has their limitations, but once they all band together, and Motoyasu finishes it off, saying that they'll become stronger than anybody could imagine once they realize that each other will cover, well, their weaknesses. And Naofumi is the definition of that. The other three heroes are the attack. His partners in this whole, well, world can cover his blind sides and attack people, but Naofumi can defend them. Naofumi can give them the means to being stronger. Naofumi can, well, prepare them for war. And that's exactly what he did. The three of them are standing there in awe, and Glass refuses to leave. Glass stands up and is basically going to attack them until She's shot with a barrel of alcohol, it seems. It seems like she's, well, drowning in these wine-like berries, and she's more or less losing all her power. The wave's time limit is running out, and Lark and Therese say that this is not a time to let their egos step in front of them. It's time to leave. So they disappear within the wave, and now Fumi stands by Raphtalia and obviously Safira. The other 3 heroes stand next to him and smile, thanking him for the work that he's done, that it took them this long to realize the effect that he could, well, cause. Now Fumi just is glad that all of this occurs, and is glad that he was able to make this much of a difference. With that all said and done, they return to Kalmyra, and then eventually Naofumi and his party head back to talk to the queen, and he's given a reward: lordship over a certain area that Naofumi is trusted to rebuild. And this place is where Raphtalia grew up, a home for Raphtalia and everybody else, like a safe haven. Raphtalia's old friend, her, his party, and any other demi-humans that are scared and afraid of going back to their own homeland. Anybody that, well, needs an insurance plan and needs safety and a safe haven can come here. Now Fumi realizes his goal. He may not be the shield hero. He may not be able to protect everybody in terms of putting up a shield and standing in front of them, but he can protect them by putting his anvil down, smacking his hammer upon his anvil, and working harder than anybody else could imagine. There might be other worlds out there. There might be other heroes trying to kill them to save their own worlds. But now Fumi will make sure that they're ready for every single war that is going to be ahead of them. Every single war that may come. And that war that, well, they're thinking about will come sooner than anybody can practically imagine. Because wave after wave, and, well, challenge after challenge, now Fumi and his party and the rest of the heroes will be there standing in front of it. Be ready and standing in front of war itself. And that's a wrap for What If Naofumi was the legendary blacksmith hero. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, sub, and comment down below any suggestions. Like I said, I'm getting used to these Naofumi what ifs, these shield hero what ifs. I'm gonna get better and better as I go. I think this one came out pretty good, and I hope all y'all enjoyed it. And a little heads up, when season 2 comes out, I'll do season 2 of obviously shield hero. Not sure if I'll come back to these what ifs and do them, but I will do season 2 of shield hero, like on the normal. So these 2-hour long videos will probably end up being 3 to 4 hours depending on how long season 2 is. And yes, I've read all the way, at least I've read up to the manga. I'm not reading the light novel. I don't have time to do that. But I have read up to the manga. But I know a lot of you have only read or watched season 1. I'm not gonna just, well, go into the manga and ignore everybody that, well, has only seen season 1 as well. And I know it makes it easier on me as well, just so you guys know, to just do season 1 for now. But we will get to season 2 in the future, coming obviously April. I hope, but with that said, sorry for rambling on a little bit there. I hope all y'all enjoyed, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.